It is incredible how much the acceptance of anime has increased nowadays. Ask anyone who grew up in the 90s or 2000s how it was to like anime back then, and you're likely to get a response that ranges from, yeah, I didn't tell anyone, to, yep, it was shit. Okay, boomer, but seriously, if you were outspoken on your preference for Japanese animation, it was seen as a weirdo thing. I remember one instance in middle school where a friend of mine asked, "Hey, what Japanese comic do you suggest me to read?" Him already knowing that the disease had spread to the point where I bought this manga. I said to him, "I'm currently reading Chobits, and I'm finding it pretty good." Chobits, for those who don't know, being a story about this robot girl named Chi, who gets found by a young student called Hideki. He initially wants to use her as an appliance, as it's common for robots in his world. But as he starts living with her, he comes to see her as more than that, with the world and subplot of Chobits exploring the impact of these robots with human appearance on society, how we should deal with technologies, and how humans relate to one another. Anyway, go read Chobits. It's good. Which is also what I incidentally told my friend, as he asked if he could borrow it, and I lended him volume 1 of Chobits. The next day he shouted in front of most of the class girls, "Hey, look what he reads!" and opened the volume in a panel that showed the protagonist's plot. By which I mean her tits. And of course, the laughter started. I tried to explain it was not pornographic, but at that point, to no avail. Alas, this cautionary tale about not lending things with light nudity to people serves to show that anime or Japanese manga, anything like that, acceptance was not that wide. Even though I think that if you lend a comic with robotic tits to anyone in middle school these days, you still risk being made fun of. I just don't know. Anyway, plot and bullying aside, I am really glad that people can nowadays just enjoy the form of media that they like. That most people understand that anime and manga are just one form of storytelling, not better nor worse than TV series, plays, movies, games, or anything. However, even though acceptance of anime has increased largely, there are still a lot of people who hold prejudices against this media, having an attitude of, "I have nothing against anime. Everyone can choose whatever they want to watch. I even have weeb friends." And while that attitude isn't bad at all, I can't help but feel like some of these prejudices keep people from experiencing some of the best stories that our modern world has to offer. So, what's my objective, if you want to call it that, in this video? Simple. I want to explore and clarify some of the reasons that I guess most people use to not watch anime. I'll be going based on what I've heard most frequently be used in my conversations with people I try to convince to watch a certain anime. But if you think I missed a great objection, please do comment below. And before I start talking about these reasons and all of that, I wanna first of all thank you, person who does not watch anime and that clicked on this video. I see a lot of people shutting themselves down and not wanting to listen to anything that can remotely be interpreted as going against it. The fact you're open to listen to my argument is real nice, real nice. Also, don't feel as I'm patronizing you by going, "These people do not have the refined taste to appreciate true art, and so I have to be like a Prometheus and bring fire to this uneducated sheep." Okay, that is really not my angle here. I just want other people to have the experience I have while watching anime. But without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing that I want to talk about when trying to sell you anime is that anime is less of a genre than it is a medium. Some people may think that's obvious, but in reality, a lot of criticism that anime receives is directed to some aspects of some anime and its genres, not to anime as a whole. For example, one of the things that I particularly don't like about anime and that a lot of people cite as being one of their problems with anime is ecchi, which, for those who don't know, is nerd for pervy stuff. It's normally just sexual exploitation to turn eyeballs. But whether you like it or not, and whichever has zero problems really, you know that it is not a characteristic that every single anime has. If you do not like jump scares, you're not gonna quit movies altogether. You try to avoid the ones who have it in abundance, like the genre of horror. But if the movie is really good, maybe you can tank some jump scares. And that's a good position, I think, to have in regards to ecchi or some other characteristics that you may think are a staple of anime. Some of these stories are touching or just very fun, and maybe some bumps should not deter you from getting to your destination. And since we're talking about genres, I feel the need to say that just like television series, anime has a lot of genres. People normally think of anime as being shonen anime, which are the big and most well-known popular ones. Your Dragon Balls, Narutos, and One Pieces of the world. And while I do appreciate a good shonen as much as the next week, it's paramount to clarify that not all anime is shonen. You can have sci-fi futuristic anime like the absolute gem that is Cowboy Bebop. Or if romance is more of a thing, you can go for Oromonogatari. You like sports? You like sports movies? Well, you're in luck. Just pick your poison. There's boxing, basketball, volleyball, cycling, American football, bread baking contest. Yes, I'm not joking, this exists and it's quite enjoyable. My point is, there is a lot of genres and stories to pick from because, as I said, anime is more of a medium than a genre, with the purpose of telling a story. And to provide you some evidence, I am going to give you guys a synopsis of one of those stories. In 80s Germany, a young and extremely talented Japanese surgeon named Kenzo Tema is making his career in a hospital in the town of Düsseldorf. His future looks very bright as he is in good favor with hospital management and is even engaged to the beautiful daughter of the owner of said hospital. Nevertheless, his life will change in a fateful evening. A patient comes in need of emergency surgery, and just as Tema is about to enter the operation room, hospital staff tells him he should not go to that particular room, but to another. He finds this a little strange, but sees no reason not to follow the order. He does the surgery on the second patient, and it's a success. It should be just another evening in his life of the extremely talented doctor, the best surgeon in the hospital. But in the next morning, Tema finds a crying woman who tells him, or better, admonishes him, that her husband, the first patient he was supposed to operate on, had died due to the other surgeon not being good enough. She questions why he chose not to operate on a poor Turkish immigrant, but to perform surgery on a famous opera singer that arrived after. Tema is shaken to his core by this, and as fate would have it, a similar situation happens shortly after. A young boy comes to the hospital in dire need of surgery, but just as Tema is about to enter surgery, the mayor of the city checks in. Tema is once again ordered to go operate the most famous patient, the one that would bring more prestige to the hospital. But this time, the Japanese doctor refuses. He operates the boy. He lives. The mayor dies. This sends Tema's life in a downward spiral. He now has management actively trying to make his life a living hell, and he even has his fiancée leave him. However, a series of mysterious deaths from management makes it so that the hospital hires new bosses who are way more favorable to Tema and that allow him to follow the natural path of his career to become head of surgery. It all goes well for years in the life of Tema, until one day where he operates a criminal involved in a series of murders. By talking with this particular patient, Tema finds out that although he did do what he's being accused of, there was someone else pulling the strings. And when the criminal escapes and Tema follows him, he finds the mastermind behind the crime, who promptly kills his patient. That mastermind, a heinous criminal responsible for a lot of murders, is Johann, the boy he opted to save instead of the mayor. Faced with the dilemma and guilt of having saved a life that killed so many other lives, Tema decides that it's his responsibility to end Johann, and so the hunt is on. A life-saving doctor turned a killer. This is the basic plot of Monster, a manga by Naoki Urasawa that was later adapted into an anime. And before I proceed, I want you to imagine. Imagine this was a podcast and I was describing a brand new Netflix series with big Hollywood stars as the main leads. And ask yourself, how many people do you think would be persuaded by that description? Because, at least for me, this story sounds incredible. The premise and the potential themes of it are great. It's compelling, and just the synopsis makes me want to watch it. And so I ask, why the fact that it is anime should stop you, or anyone, from giving it a shot? Of course, as I said before on this channel, but I make it sound like this channel is vast and ancient, when in fact it has only one odd video, which you should totally check out if you haven't yet. But anyway, as I said before, the medium and the plot are not separable. If you experience the plot through anime, that is part of your experience. Was this not the case, simply making an anime live action should suffice to have a lot of people watching, while retaining the quality of the original. And sadly, it is most often the case that live action adaptations do not translate well the original source of anime, and are underwhelming to say the least. Makes for good hate watching though, for the people that are into that. Another common thing I hear from people that don't watch anime is that it is something made for children. I could just point again to Monster and ask you if you really think that that is a story for children. But I guess it's already clear that yes, there are anime for children and adolescents, but there are also anime for adults. It's just that, again, the most famous anime are the ones aimed at adolescents, particularly the target audience of young boys at about high school age. That being said, there is something I propose. I don't think that there isn't such a thing as adult media and kids media. There is a difference there, no doubt, and I'd even go as far as saying it's a good thing to know which is which. However, let me ask you this. If you could opt between watching episodes of something like Jersey Shore or watching, say, Coco by Pixar, which would you choose? This question does not imply a hierarchical idea that one is definitely better than the other. You can watch whichever. But rather I want to ask, is just because one is more adult than the other a real reason to pick that one? We go to movies and are to feel things that makes us human, to try and understand our condition as such, or just to have fun, and yes, something whose main target audience is kids has normally simpler language and other aesthetical choices that take that demographic into consideration. But that does not mean that the things being showcased lack depth or meaning or do not work as a good piece of media. And on the other hand, something aimed at adults can be very shallow. So please, if you are deterred by the "it's for children" argument, and you have watched it and felt like, yeah, only children would like this, then that's fine. But it would be a good thing not to have that mindset before watching an anime. Finally, I want to talk more in depth about something that we briefly touched on at the beginning of this video: the aesthetical particularities of anime. Every type of media or art performance has its aesthetical characteristics inherent to them. That comes with its own do's and don'ts, traditions and cliches. And most of those are very cultural, and so if you're not used to that particular cultural manifestation, you're going to find it a bit odd and not worthwhile. For example, in Indian classical music concerts, it is not uncommon for the musicians to speak with one another in the middle of the performance. It just happens and there's no problem. However, if someone who is used to watching Western classical music concerts sees this talk happening, it will come as a bit of a shock, because in the Western context, musicians should not speak in a noticeable way in the middle of a performance. These kinds of rights in media can even extend to the making of it, and sometimes you may think that you will have familiarity with said media because you think it will be similar to something you know, and yet not understanding the cultural particularities can lead to estrangement. If you're playing a bossa nova tune for the first time, you may find it similar to jazz, because it is. But if you go and play it in a 4x4 time signature, you're going to get some Brazilians raising their eyebrows, and some will even get outright pissed at you. Something that I found out in real life in a not so pleasant way. That's because bossa nova is played in a 2x4 time signature, not 4x4. Editing Moon here. If you guys would like me to get more technical and explain these musical terms, please tell me in the comments and I'll do it in the next videos. All that serves to show that there is a particular context behind the things you see in anime, even in the more stereotypical ones. The colored hair and exaggerated reactions come especially from a place of trying to stand out and be assertive in a society that wants you to conform and go unnoticed, like the Japanese society is very known to encourage its citizens to. And so it makes perfect sense from a visual point of view for a protagonist, someone who will normally affect some kind of change through action, to stand out, to have colored spiky hair. And talking about the making of animes, the scenes, the abundance of scenes of big moments and reactions in every other episode tends to happen due to the fact that most anime come from manga, aka Japanese comics, and most manga tend to be published on a weekly basis in chapters. These chapters are like the episodes of a TV series, which tend to follow an arc of excitement that starts low, builds up something, and ends on a high, to pump up the audience for the next installment. However, if you consider that every episode of an anime covers about 3 or more chapters, from what I can tell by my experience, from its source material, it will make sense that an episode of anime would have 3 or more wow or moments that come from the chapters. And at the end of the day, does that really prevent it from being enjoyable? Again, if for you that's a problem, then yes, no problem. But know that if you give it a try and get used to anime, it may no longer bother you. It's like watching a sitcom. If you pay attention and think about the laughter track, then that may ruin the watch. But if you go along, you may end up with a worthwhile moment. To wrap things up, I would like to recommend you guys an anime. Sure, if you have a preference for a specific genre of cinema or TV series like, say, sci-fi, you should Google best sci-fi anime and give it a shot. But for the people that want a broader answer, something that is a quality show that can go deep, but that also shows what a more popular anime normally has, I've got my suggestion. Hunter x Hunter is a series that I believe to be ideal for my purposes here. And the reason for it is that it has a series of elements that you find in other anime, but rarely all into the same one. The first arc of this anime, and one could argue the first 3 arcs, why not, are very typical from what people think anime is. It is very adventurous, full of wow moments, and very shonen-y, that's a word, which makes it very enjoyable, as it is a very well crafted, and to be honest, it even subverts some of the conventions of shonen sometimes. However, in its 4th arc, the series takes a more somber and serious turn, turning a quest for adventure into a full revenge story amidst a mafia and thieves setting. And in that arc, you find some of the best antagonists that anime, or even media in general, have to offer. The series, as every long series, will have its dull moments for sure, but most of the time the series is a blast. And when you get to the penultimate arc of the series, you get its magnum opus, with yet another set of brilliant antagonists touching themes, scenes of complete and utter dread but also of sublime beauty, all the while remaining very anime, with great action and character development in abundance. So go watch Hunter x Hunter, the 2011 version, as this series has 2 versions and the 2011 one is the one that is more complete in terms of the story. I say more complete because the series is still being published as a manga. Is it though? Is it though? Which, by the way, is still fantastic. And maybe, who knows, if you go and watch the series, you want to continue reading the manga. That is, if you go and decide that, hey, maybe anime is for me.